Today we have with us Dan VanHassent. Did I say that right, Dan?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, thank you. I hope so, but sometimes I butcher a name. So Dan teaches AP. What does AP stand for, by the way?
Advanced Placement.
Advanced Placement. All right.
Some place that you and I never were.
Well, that's why I had to ask. He teaches human geography, psychology, and world history at Pennsylvania Leadership Charter School, which is a cyber school based in Westchester. He's been there for 9 years. He previously taught at Henderson High School, North Penn High School. He is the Social Studies Department chair and one of the teachers involved in their international trips program. And just recently, he was on a whirlwind tour of Japan, which I think you said, number one, was your longest trip there.
That's a long
with
flight.
The most students or something.
It was the most amount of students that we've had on a trip.
How many is that?
We had 26.
Oh my God!
Students.
Yeah, it's a lot of kids.
Wow.
So if you, what I was interested in talking to Dan was, I was like, hey, I knew he was a teacher, and then of course I was like, what do you teach again? And I thought it was something of what you and I would refer to, Barry, in our age is social studies.
Right.
Which it kind of is, right?
Yeah.
But I often. It's part of my old man things. It's like seeps out of your DNA when you get to, as an old man, you say things like, why they got to come up with all these goofy names for stuff now?
Right.
Yeah. Why can't we just call it social studies? Yeah. But I'm joking around. But anyway, so he said, I teach human geography. And I was like, aha. So we could go one of two ways. Oftentimes in my brain, I either go, oh, is this like some kind of made-up thing that we fancify something even though we're doing the same old stuff, or is this something really different and new? And so human geography, as I'm looking it up here, you can tell us more about this, Dan, if this is right on or not. How humans interact with, and I think you kind of said this, how humans interact with places, environments, and each other across the Earth's surface. Now, at first, that sounds a little woo-woo, but rather than focus on the actual physical geography of our planet, right?
Yeah.
It is like how we as a species are interacting with our planet in groups and tribes and cultures, and I think that's probably pretty important.
Yeah.
I would say.
It definitely is.
I think it's definitely, because it really influences these things. And I'm always fascinated by the thought of, this, when we think of our map, the globe, and all these things, we have these imaginary lines, and that always weirds me out a little bit. But it also relates back to sort of how the system kind of works. And Barry, we've talked about, you and I have had discussions like this, where when you create a law, if we're going to follow a rule, there has to be a pretty decisive rule. It's not like, it sort of should be like this. That gets real wishy-washy. And then
that's what we call Latin America.
And you can't enforce that, right? So if we're going to go to all the trouble to make a law, and one of the ways that I brought this up is, if we're going to make a rule like, hey, you can't kill another citizen, then we can all agree on that. And then we've gotten into this weird...
Except for that one guy down the street.
And we get into these weird places of where we then, you know what... Then we start to chop things up. Like, here's the line in the sand. You can't kill another human being. All right, we agree. Well, what if they... And then we start breaking these things down. Well, what if I did it because you're a different color, or I did it because you're... whatever the reason is. It's like, that becomes now a hate crime. And I think it starts to muddy the water a lot, because it's like, no. Let's just go back to, you shouldn't kill another human being. That's the thing, right?
In Australia, they were allowed to hunt Aborigines
at one time.
Yeah, true. Yeah, crazy.
Not anymore.
No, that's changed, thankfully.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think there's it brings context into things a little bit. So I'm interested to hear a little bit about some of those. Anyway, when we get into these ideas of painting a line, on the ground, and you're like, now I'm. I always think of the Three Stooges bit. You are now in Sing Sing.
I am now in Sing Sing.
That's right. He does this hypnotizing thing. Dan, you're too young for that.
He smashes the chair over his head.
Yeah. He anyway, you are now here. No, now I'm now there. It's like sort of this kind of weird thing. I think that in 2026, it's like, do we need to have borders? And there's like, kind of, absolutely, because if I'm in charge of managing this area, I need to know where the area is, and then I can manage it. And I think that has become under fire in a lot of ways. Like, why can't we just all live in peace? And it's like, well, because that's not how things work.
Danny, you're regretting coming on the show yet?
No.
All right. So anyway, and I know I kind of got off on a couple little different things.
No, not at all.
A little bit. So, Dan, let's talk about, you're a teacher and you teach human geography. And so what does that look like in 2026? I know what it looked like in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, but now it's 2026. So, like, what does that look like as a teacher in modern in 2026?
So, especially at my school, where it's a cyber school for most students. So students are at home.
Completely online.
All
right. There's no in-person stuff at your school.
We do have 2 on-site programs at my school, but I teach in the fully cyber portions. And so all of my students are at home.
All right.
I was teaching from an office, but now all of the teachers are going to be working from home starting next year.
Oh. Interesting.
So I'll be in my office, set up in the basement.
Do you wear a tie?
When I'm doing my live classes,
good.
yes.
Good.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing right off the bat? Because that's a big contention. I think a lot of times we've seen over the past, since the pandemic, where we're all going online, everybody.
Yeah.
Everything, everywhere, everybody's going online. Everybody's staying home. And then we've seen a great decline in a lot of standardized testing, as my understanding of it. Is that right?
So our school has been online even well before COVID.
Yeah, there's been charter schools and online stuff way before COVID.
Yeah, so when COVID hit, we're like, okay, we're just doing everything from home that we were doing normally.
Right.
So it was pretty much status quo for us, except the school size doubled during COVID.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Well, why?
The numbers have dwindled.
And that makes sense, because if let's say I'm going to whatever local school district around here, no matter how good it is,
right?
And then all of a sudden we're like, hey, we're going online. And you're like, ooh, do I want to go online with the people who are just going online next week?
Exactly.
Or do I want to go online with the people who've been doing this for 10 years?
Got all the bugs ironed out.
Never buy the first model car. Everybody knows that. I'm going to wait till they run all the bugs out of it. And then, all right, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys, when did the charter school open?
I think it's 2003, 2004.
2003.
So early, mid 2000s.
Okay. So you had, at least a decade plus to work the bugs out, as they say. And that's the Pennsylvania Leadership Charter School.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then what?
And then, so for me, I have 1 live class per week with students through Zoom, where I'm actually doing more of the kind of like traditional teaching.
Interactive.
And then the other 4 days, the students are doing work on their own that is posted for them in our learning management system. We use Canvas, which is what some like colleges use.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of what a typical week. So once a week, the students are with me together, and then the other 4 days they're kind of working on their own as it best fits their schedule.
What do you think you guys had at your charter school nailed down that maybe some of the others, when schools switched over, that they wouldn't have had? There's experience. You can't buy experience. Right. It's priceless.
Yeah.
But what else do you think?
Let's see. We also had...
No pressure.
Yeah. On the spot here.
And maybe you don't know, and that's fine too. That's always a good answer.
I feel like we had a pretty good system when there is so much flexibility with schooling, but there were still kind of firm deadlines that students needed to adhere to, which has been helpful, because the students at our school, they can be doing all sorts of different things. I've had students that are training for the Olympics. I've had students that are in the Philadelphia Ballet.
Wow.
So which prevents them from being in a traditional school from 7:30 to 3. And
that makes sense, because I think there's a lot of situations like that when you think of child actors and stars, and they're on a show and they have to be filming things, and they're like, you would always hear like, oh, we brought in tutors and things like that. So I think online schooling is cool. I think it's a great opportunity. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's great for everybody, and that's what we've seen.
Yeah.
Because everybody was forced into it, mm-hmm. right? And so people that had no idea weren't ready, and then you have a facilitator who is no idea and not ready. They did the best that they could. I'm not saying that, but it's also like doing the best you could. I don't want my surgeon doing the best that they could. You know what I mean? I don't want my airplane pilot just doing the best that they could. And I think that was the problem, right? We rushed into this thing on this large scale that we just weren't ready for.
Yeah. It works for the students that need it.
Yeah.
And it works for the ones that kind of fit that environment a little bit more.
Yeah. And your students, it sounds, are more like self-starters. They have a more of a responsibility, mm-hmm. like that they're able to run themselves with. Look, there's certain people that need a regiment. They need to be in a class. They need mm-hmm. to go here. They need to go there. And then there's other ones that are like, I got this. I know my responsibilities. I get it done. Am I right on that? It's a different class.
For the most part.
And I'm not saying one's different from the other. Like one's better than the other, because it's not. It's just that certain people learn certain ways.
It's a different style.
And some can certainly do it, and others like, not me. Oh, if it had been me and I hadn't had a regiment, I'd be off wandering. I never would have.
Tell them how long you went to college.
3 days. But it was a good 3 days. Yeah. I'm telling you right now, Dan. Good 3 days.
I think you bring up a good point, Barry, is different doesn't have to mean better.
Right.
Or not better. Right. But oftentimes, we always know what happens. When we have an agency or somebody that's in charge of something, then it becomes, well, we have to quantify it, and then it's going to come down to the bottom line, which often is like money. Mm-hmm. Like last week we had that guy, Luke O'Brien, Lukey the Bird, and he was this guy who had done music counseling or therapy in the school system, and it's like he did a great job. Everybody loved him. He was doing great work, and I was like, but he didn't go to school for it, mm-hmm. and so it was like, so therefore somewhere in the bean counter goes, oh well, this guy's doesn't have these letters after his name, even though he might be doing the better job than the guy with the letters after their name, and so he wasn't as valued as much. And he's like, well, now I can't make a living. Like, I love doing what I do, but I also can't afford to do this.
Yeah.
So at some point, what am I going to do? Take on 2 or 3 jobs and do this, or go do the next thing? So getting back to like different is just different. And I think that we oftentimes get sucked into where we have to go, well, is it better or not better? And it's like, well, one, why are we making this determination of something that's better versus not better? Or is it a bottom line thing?
And it depends on the individual.
Right. And I think the school system for a long time, you can tell me if you agree or disagree, just hasn't taken that into consideration.
Yeah.
Like, what is the best learning style for this individual, rather than trying to, what is it, like this mid-century, German model of, make everybody better laborers, was sort of this idea, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Versus, but I get it. You can't also then, there's pieces of society that we can't also, hey, everybody gets to like do what they want, like learn how you want. And that sounds great, but that's, this is the job. And so when you have a line of 100 people and it's like, who's going to, there's a handoff there. There's a balance of things.
Yeah.
Do you struggle with that as a teacher? And you're more than a teacher. You're like head of a department. Yeah. So, you're going to get involved in curriculum, curriculum creating and all that kind of stuff. So like, hey, what do kids really need as they are moving towards whatever their next step is? And sometimes that's college or secondary education, and sometimes it's the workforce.
And then, the first thing I thought of with curriculum, especially with social studies, is that so at our school we do a curriculum revision every 5 years or so. With history, that means we have more curriculum to teach every couple of years too. So it's like, okay, there are some things that we may have to trim down a little bit kind of earlier on, so we can get to a little bit of the present day as well. But with the amount of students that we have at our school, in my department, I think I try to make it so that way each teacher has around 120 to 150 students, which is what like a traditional like public high school teacher would have as well throughout the day. But there's a lot of different considerations to have with each student, and knowing that from the get-go is going to be very helpful for us, and knowing exactly what kind of each student needs, which can be a lot at times, depending on the class size and what exactly their accommodations and specifications may be. But yeah, it can be a lot of times, but that's part of the gig.
Yeah, I think anything where you're in a, for lack of a better term, you're serving others, and you are having relationships, and the bigger the group then is like, I can only individualize so much.
Right.
It depends on the setting. The smaller the setting, the more you can individualize in that same time frame and time work. For people who don't know, I kind of gave you a real rough override of human geography, but how do you see it? Like when somebody says, hey, what's human geography? Like, what is that to you, and why do you think that's an important thing to teach? Because right now that's curriculum is under the gun, right? Because we've seen a decline, I think. Right? Has there been a decline for them in a lot of things?
In social studies, it's not one of the tested subjects in Pennsylvania. So high schools, we have the Keystone exams. There's one for Algebra 1, there's one for biology, and one for literature, which students typically take when they're in their sophomore year.
All right, math, biology, and science,
and
basically
English.
Or English. What did I say? Anyway, who cares?
Clearly, he didn't take the test for English.
So math, science, and English.
Yeah. Okay. And then social studies, there is not one.
So the social studies, there's not one.
Yeah. But so human geography, when students are interested or they've heard about the course and they're like, what is this?
Right.
I basically tell students it's a way of understanding about kind of the patterns and processes of the world as it is today. And in the course, we talk about development patterns around the world. So what does it mean when you hear of a developed country versus a developing country? Which ones are more advanced, and why that is? We talk about population patterns, migration patterns, culture, language, religion, borders, as we were talking about earlier, trade, government organizations, agriculture, where our food comes from, and the patterns behind all of that, as well as cities.
Yeah.
So
how well-rounded is that people actually begin to understand their world?
Well,
that's exactly right.
If I'm teaching you these harder, I'll call it a harder curriculum of math, science, certain truths that we know right now. Because truth, I don't think, is a destination. It is constantly developing because we're learning more, et cetera. So you have math, science, and literature. So how to communicate literature, how to comprehend is literature. How do I take an idea and communicate that to you? I think that all delves out of literature, and it has to have a basic starting place. Whether I'm writing down words on a computer or I'm writing them down in cursive, that's the big argument. They should learn cursive. No, I don't know cursive. But the English language, right? It's come under fire. With slang and all this other stuff. And then there's math. Math's pretty important. Math is, a huge part of science, in and of itself. And then we have these things of science. But what is the real thing of you taking these things that are in isolation, but really it's in how we are walking around in our world. And in our world is interaction of different people, their experience and perspective, which is derived from where they live and their culture and all those influences. So I think, what better way to tie that all in, I think, was what you were talking about, Barry. How important is that if I'm taking these things, I have to plug them into my experience and how I choose to then carry out that experience for whether it's my job or I'm doing whatever.
And the students really see the world differently after taking that course.
Well, look at the Europeans coming over here for the first time. They've been told everything about America, and now they're finding out what they were told isn't really true.
Right.
So now,
or maybe some things are really true.
And some things could be true. Like the one guy
I see. Because I heard this phrase the other day, Barry and Dan, that really stuck with me. It was about stereotypes. And it was and I'll look up the guy's name. He does these interviews, and he just wrote a book, Peter something. Anyway, he was like, hey, I'm here exploring these stereotypes. And he's like, but stereotypes are real. Like they come from
They come from something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like this tiny little truth, but then it gets overgeneralized. Like not all, 55-year-old white bald guys with beards and glasses do this stuff, right? Yeah. Maybe.
Like I'm only half Italian, the other half's Polish. So in our mafia, we make you an offer you can't understand. Thank you. I'll be here all week. So, but being half Italian, I only use my hands half as much. But my father was like a helicopter guy. It's just a classic Italian thing. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But that it comes from different cultures, and so that's where the stereotypes type of thing comes from. But that's just the way it is.
It's usually some teeny kernel of truth.
A kernel of truth. Yeah, that's exactly it. So we keep stealing everything from Dan here.
Very good. Very good.
Oh, by the way, that guy's name is Peter Santanello. Peter Santanello.
Sounds like a Paisan to me.
Enello, and he has a book. He's on YouTube. He's huge.
He's also a great guitarist.
Yeah, right.
No, God, you guys are so silly. I forget the name of his book.
Well, while he's babbling, back to you, Dan.
Yeah.
So
Your Fellow Americans is what it's called, and it's really interesting. Go ahead.
So you explain to people, you open up the students' eyes to all the different things that are out there and how things work in these different cultures, so that they have a better grasp, a better understanding when they actually see the news and they understand. They go, in history, this is kind of where they came from, or this was the religion, the culture that formed this. So that you get the mixes, like you get down into Haiti and down into the islands, which is a mix of Christianity and voodoo. Where did that come from? And this is how that all came to be. And so that's really, you delve into that is what you're really talking. Am I right on that?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to, because the world is so diverse.
Right.
I can't hit on everything. I love that. But just opening the students' eyes up to, yes, there's going to be these differences, and there's going to be these kind of combinations of cultures too, and that is all tied back to history. We don't talk too much about history in that particular course, but it does play a role in how the world has formed into what it is. Sure. With all of those different patterns and processes.
Yeah, there's like an understanding, right?
Yeah.
Like, when, for example, the term colonizer has gotten this huge thing. Like, well, that's sort of how the world worked for
forever,
a large period of our history. Like, most cultures were colonizing other cultures.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that's a stereotype. Like America has this, and American citizens have gotten this constant flow of like, we're the bad guy, when we were one of the first countries to say, you know what, we're going to stop slavery. We were one of the first countries to, our interactions with indigenous people is not what I learned when I went to school. When we really look through history, and there's lots of books. I was talking to somebody else about this, and they were like, what? Wait a minute. Because they made this really generalized statement of like, wow, we really shafted the Native Americans, was the term. And I was like, well, have you read this? Have you seen this book about blah, blah, blah? And it's like, well, okay. And then, so when those kinds of things comes up, it's hard to then continue on in a conversation, because now it just sounds like I'm talking at you.
Right.
Because you have a belief, and you don't have any of this other information to change your perspective on things. And that doesn't mean we didn't take advantage of indigenous people anywhere along the road. I just think to the degree and the severity, it wasn't always this one general thing, like we just came in and told everybody to go to a reservation. Like a lot of those things were like the chiefs and standing chiefs of different nations, because there were so many, right? They came into conversations with our government on their own accord. Like it wasn't quite what I think we paint this picture of all the time.
Well, I'll tell you, write history. The victor always gets to write the history.
Correct. Yeah. And there's a lot of that, right? So you can see, like, as you get older, you can kind of see, like, oh, well, it wasn't. Just like with archaeology. Like, when I grew up and it was like Tutankhamun had been uncovered, and it was like, oh, wow, like, Oh, it's like what the pyramid is always learned. Like, what did you learn the pyramids were?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, the radio towers. Everybody knows that. Aliens built them the radio towers.
That's not what you learned.
Let me go get my tinfoil hat.
They were supposed to be a tomb, and now we know like that. We really just don't know what it is. Right. And of course, there's all the goofy figures.
Yeah, you know how they got built, right?
No.
Because there were no cell phones, so nobody had anything better to do, so they worked on temples.
Cell phone towers.
They built things because they weren't disturbed by television.
Dan, put your tinfoil hat on.
Anyway, back to you, Dan.
You took your tinfoil hat off. Put it back on. I don't want the government reading your mind over there. All right, so I think that's a really awesome thing, the way you're teaching and sharing. Do you get any pushback on that from anywhere? I don't know. You go to school board meetings or anything, or I get
no pushback whatsoever.
That's awesome.
With this course. We have an elective version or a semester long version of this course, which is only covers some of those topics that I talked about earlier. But then I think it was my second year. Going into my second year teaching at this school, I talked to my department chair at the time and said, hey, can we offer the advanced placement or the college level version of this course, which covers the full range of those units, of those topics. And I've been teaching that ever since.
Awesome.
It's fascinating stuff, man.
Yeah, it's a very interesting course. And I've had students come back because it's offered for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. Which is kind of atypical for some AP courses. Those are typically more of when you get to your junior and senior year. But especially if I have them as freshmen, then I'll hear from other teachers that have those students when they're in 11th and 12th grade saying, oh, they were talking about something that you taught them back in human geography when you were in 9th and 10th grade. Because it's stuff it's stuff that sticks with them. Yeah. It's not all these...
it's not like abstract.
Random dates and facts. It's like, okay, this is something specific that you can see out in the world today.
Right, so you can associate it. That's the worst thing about getting taught something, right?
Yeah,
it falls down to rote memorization, but when it becomes almost interactive, it becomes personal, and then you absorb it because then it's a true life lesson.
Right.
That's what's awesome about it.
Well, that's what science teaches us, is that the more associations you can have with an input, you have a piece of data, if you can associate that data with things that you've already done or things that you're doing, right, it forms these it's like wheels on a hub. The more spokes you can put on that hub, then the more you retain that, the more and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's just a basic thing of like learning.
You're telling the psychology guy this.
Right. I was like, well, ding, ding, ding. There we go. Yeah.
I just need validation, Dan. That's right. I just want to make sure.
It's all about
doing great.
Thank you, Dan. Can we get some studio applause?
There we go.
There you go. He's a little slow on it. He's only had one energy drink so far. I think the Descenza has slowed him down. Although
that's the studio though, not me.
I know. Well, let's go. Let's wake him up over there.
Make sure. Clarify.
All right, cool. So, Dan, I know you're very well traveled. Do you travel? Most of your trips, are they school related, or are you doing traveling on your own as well?
I'm doing travel on my own.
So, how many countries have you been to?
Counting territories too.
Just wing it.
I'm at 31.
31. That's pretty cool.
Are any of them Papua New Guinea?
Have not made it there yet.
I just say that because I like to say Papua New Guinea.
Papua New Guinea, yeah. What do you think is the most... I don't want to say... It's not the word royal. I can't think. The most, like the furthest out, isolated place you've ever been to.
Yeah.
Like the one that's like, this was really wild.
I would most remote would probably be when I was in...
Gilligan's Island doesn't count.
No, not Gilligan's Island. When I was in South Africa, we did a safari at the end of our tour. It was, I think, a couple hours north of Johannesburg.
Mm-hmm. You go up to Kruger?
Well, it wasn't Kruger. Mm-hmm. We didn't make it that far. Palandsberg National Park, which is close to the border with I think it was Botswana.
Which is crazy because when we think of national park, our national parks are really big here. But when you're in Africa, the entire continent, and they go, oh, yeah, the national park. Oh, yeah, it's like as big as Texas. That's like the national park.
Yeah. And by the way,
it's huge. Huge.
Being in those parks and seeing all those wild animals, the elephants and all the cats and all that stuff, not nearly as dangerous as being in Joburg.
Yeah. when I was in Johannesburg, our professor told us, like, you are not leaving the hotel tonight just because it is pretty dangerous there, unfortunately.
It is hazardous. Yeah.
Meanwhile, when we were in Cape Town earlier that week, they were like, yep, you're good to walk around. We were close to like the waterfront area there, which was really cool. But when the one night that we were in Johannesburg, we were told, like, don't leave the hotel.
One of the most dangerous cities.
You're staying here.
That was
tonight.
when the Eagles, they were in Brazil, and they told the players and the fans that were there, like, don't leave.
Don't leave.
Stay in your hotel.
Well, I think one of the big security things is, one, you know, as a white person, you stand out real quick, right? That's number one. Not that
10%er. You're a 10%er.
Not that there's not other white people in Africa, but it's like, boom, that's the first thing. And then your accent and things, they're going to be like, oh, okay. And then you have money.
Yeah.
Like, or the perception that you have.
You're
money.
a sheep worth fleecing.
Yeah, you're a sheep worth fleecing. So imagine, multiplying that, 10xing that as a, famous sports personality.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, yeah, security risk. So I've known some guys that worked in the security industry that are like, their job is like protecting really high level executives when they're traveling abroad. Yeah. And it's like, it's a real thing. It's some other countries are like real wild, man.
Well, I remember
wild.
This isn't even a remote spot, but being at the Leaning Tower of Pisa, in Italy.
Hold on to your wallet because they're trying to pickpocket.
Exactly, and I was with like a group of my friends walking around, and this group of people started like grabbing at my arm and my pockets, trying to get my wallet.
Oh, just like, flat out, like
not even trying to hide it. I'm like, what is going on here?
And it's a mob type of thing when they do it, so you can't see what happens.
And I was with a group of like 20 people, so it was like they were really obvious about it there.
Yeah, and by the way, you're not so likely to like defend yourself because you're like, kind of what's going on? It catches you off guard. And we tend to try and be compliant. We don't want to do anything, but the big thing is to just get them back out of the way as hard as possible, because then you're not so easy to get. But it's, again, different cultures, different way they do that. In Italy, they send out people under 18, young people, to do that stuff because they get prosecuted or whatever. It's all over. And that's what they do.
They do that here in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
that's true. Where most of the people who are selling drugs, they get kids to sell their drugs because they're like, all right, you're a minor. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah. That's why you always hear these teenagers are shooting each other.
Yeah. This isn't part of the culture thing you teach, is it?
That part, no. No. Don't teach that culture.
Back to you, Dan.
All right, so out of your 31 countries you visited, what has been your favorite country to visit?
They're not listening to you.
That's hard. That's really difficult.
Or how about this? I'll make it easier. Top 3.
Yeah.
Top 3?
Yeah.
Give me top 3. Just picking your favorite could be like, well, it depends. Like,
yeah, because some areas it's more like culture, some is more like natural beauty.
Right. France, New Zealand.
Have not been to New Zealand yet. That's on the list.
Camden.
South Korea would definitely be up there.
Oh, yeah.
Really? Yeah, I was there last summer.
Okay.
He's a big kimchi fan.
Kimchi was really good, especially over there.
Yeah.
South Africa, I think, would be on that list just because we did a wide variety of things while we were there.
It's exotic and cheap.
Yes.
Getting there is expensive.
Then, that was the longest flight
brutal.
that I've taken. It was 16 hours direct from JFK to Johannesburg.
And it didn't used to be direct. You used to have to fly someplace, and then they're like France because of apartheid.
Because of and just how long that flight was, which has made all the other ones not feel quite as bad. Right. But I think...
How'd you like to be the pilot looking at the fuel gauge?
And be like, I hope we last these next 16 hours, right?
I hope I don't get a front wind.
Yeah. And then maybe a little bit of recency bias, but I think Japan was pretty cool. Just after coming back.
Yeah, good point. There. Good point. Oh, Japan.
Well, you are like the third person in my circle that's fairly close that I've been able to talk to about it, and everybody it really has great things to say about Japan. Mm-hmm. And it's on my bucket list. I would love to go to Japan at some point. One is like the cleanliness, just the culture in general is just, societally they have just agreed, hey, we are not going to litter.
Yeah.
And they just don't litter. And they're like, hey, we're going to be polite. And we're just polite.
Not even trash cans on the street.
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
You make the litter, you put it in your pocket and take it with you.
And so we were with a tour group, and our tour director would pass out plastic bags for us. So in case we bought something at one of the street markets, or we bought something here that would then cause some sort of trash, it would be, you have to
take it with you,
pack it out, put it in the bag, bring it with you, like put it in your backpack or do whatever, and then throw it out when you get back to the hotel.
Personal responsibility.
Yes. And there's no litter anywhere.
No.
Yeah.
Even with no trash cans.
No gum on the streets.
Everything was very, very clean. Even when we only took the subway once, when we were in Kyoto, but it was still like thinking about what
Philadelphia looks like.
Either Philadelphia or New York.
And New York.
That distinctive smell.
There was no distinctive smell in Japanese subways.
Nice. Yeah, Japan is one of the places, if I had to pick right now, it would probably be my number one. If I won the lottery, that would probably definitely be up there. I would think traveling would be almost a necessity in your skill set for teaching. Because you're doing it firsthand. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I always joke around. It's like back when aerobics was big and it was like the overweight aerobics instructor. And you're like, well, how does this work?
Yeah, right.
Not that you can't be really aerobically fit and overweight, but it was also like this kind of mixed message of like,
Yeah, look at John Belushi.
Yeah, so like studying something and then being like, oh yeah, I've been here, I've been there. That's got to add a whole layer to your teaching and what you bring to the table, I'm sure.
And that's one thing that I do like. So when I do travel, I can say, okay, whether it's in the human geography course or whether it's in my world history course, even in psych, I can bring that in too, where I bring in elements of the different trips. And I can include little anecdotes and especially like pictures of the different places that I've traveled to. One story that always kind of grosses students out, a bit, but then I also ask, is it gross? Is it cool? Is it a little bit of both? And they often say it's a little bit of both. But I was able to go to Russia back in 2013. Mm-hmm. And when we were in Moscow, we went to go see Lenin's mausoleum, which is right outside of the Kremlin. And it was almost like going through airport security. Like you had to put everything like in a bin and it actually had to stay there. You couldn't bring anything in with you.
Isn't that right in Red Square?
It is, yeah. And you go down into his tomb, and he's in a glass casket. And it just looks like he was asleep, how we look at night when we're sleeping.
How do they do that? Do they inject them with polymers? What do they do?
I don't know, but I'm like, this is cool, but also, like, he's been dead for 90 years at this point.
Yeah,
he still looks like this, so I don't know what they're doing.
It's genetics.
Yeah, but then we weren't able to stay there for very long. So it's like you're only in there for a few minutes and then get out. But even like little things like that can tie that into whatever it is that I'm teaching. If there's a place that I've been to or some sort of experience that I've had while traveling, can tie that in.
Well, it's offering a perspective. It's not like you can bring somebody in from each country each week as you're teaching these things to get firsthand information. So it's the closest thing that maybe some people like myself might ever get.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'll ever go see Lenin. But
But Japan, the students went with you on that.
Yes.
That makes a big difference because now they're the ones getting immersed in it.
Yep. And some of them were students that I had this year. The trip was open to any student at our school. Mm-hmm. Didn't matter what course they were in. So it was cool for some of them who I had in class to go experience all of that.
I would like to volunteer to be a chaperone on the next trip to Japan.
So, and that's an interesting thing, chaperone guy. What is the cost? Now you offer it to anybody that wants to go. What were they looking at? Because you were gone for 2 weeks?
9-10 days or so.
Okay, so you got the flight over.
Mm-hmm.
Did you fly direct? You fly into Icheon and back.
So we had a layover in Montreal on the way over, so it was not a long flight. And then it was direct from Montreal to Tokyo. So that was, I think, 12 hours.
Yeah, it's like going to Auckland. Yeah.
So it was a long flight.
Okay, and then but okay. So what's the cost to them? Like you go, here's the package. This is what we're doing. Your number is X. About what does it cost the students?
I think it depended on when they signed up for the trip, but I think it was a little over $5,000.
That's a deal.
And that includes their flight. That includes hotels every night. That includes breakfast. That includes dinner. All the entrances to museums, the transportation everywhere.
You can't stay in Wildwood for a week at a beach rent for $5,000.
Exactly.
For real. So when you think about, I could go to Wildwood
or
for a week,
or
I could go to Japan for 9 to 10 days.
Right.
I'm going to pick Japan.
And the only thing that the students had to pay for that wasn't included in that package was their lunches each day.
Okay.
Because usually around lunchtime is also a little bit of their free time.
Gotcha.
Where it's like we tell them you have to stay in groups, whether we're on like this one like main street that has a bunch of like souvenir shops and different like food market stalls for lunch, but then that gives them a little bit of their own independence as well on these trips. But yeah, so it's usually for when we run these, it's a different location every year. But when we run these trips, it's usually a pretty good deal compared to when you would be trying to plan this on your own. Which is
you get like part of it's a group deal, I would assume. Part of it's students. There's probably somewhere down there, I don't know, because it's school, government kickback a little bit here or there somewhere.
And then there's the students are sharing rooms, so which kind of limits the cost a little bit as well.
You're reducing it instead of being single rooms, whatever. Right. Yeah. When I travel, we rent a house, and there's usually like 3 couples.
And
then you're sharing that, and it's incredibly discounted when you're doing that.
And the hotel rooms in Japan were a little bit smaller. So usually what we do is we are able to fit 4 students in a room. With
Kramer
2 queen beds.
In Seinfeld, Kramer just put all the Japanese tourists into the drawers. Right. That worked out well.
That's honestly how I felt with one of my hotel rooms. I'm like, it's a bed, a desk, a bathroom.
Yeah.
Not much more room other than that.
Very utilitarian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Space is key.
Yes, it's at a premium.
Well, listen, we're coming up on our July 4th is this Saturday. It's our tricentennial. How, looking through a human geography lens, how do you see this celebration from a county perspective, state, the nation, the world?
I mean, the fact that we're in this region of the country is a pretty big deal.
Cool, yeah.
Not that far away from Philadelphia. But one of the things that we do talk about in the human geography course is independence movements. Yeah. So thinking back to how we gained our independence versus some countries or kind of territories today that are hoping to gain their independence, or certain regions, places in other countries that are hoping to maybe separate or, step away and kind of become their own country someday. But I think this part of our history leading up to the 250th, celebrating the 250th, it touches on, patriotism, nationalism. This is a big deal for our country, and we usually celebrate 4th of July, in a very patriotic Stars and Stripes way, right? Kind of blending into the culture side of things. But it is definitely something to celebrate, especially in our area. And it kind of touches on some of the buttons of that human geography course, especially with culture and thinking about kind of independence and kind of developing our own culture as we have over the last 250 years.
I mean, in the shift, 250 years is a blink of an eye in the world history, but I think it's a long time for us, and we are, compared to many countries, we're still a new We're like a new guy, right?
Yeah.
You know, other countries have been around. They're like, oh, 250. Oh, that's nice. I remember when we were 250 years old.
Yeah, and that was many, many years ago.
Right. So when we talk about like Europe and various cultures there and Asia particularly, nationalism and patriotism has sort of gotten a bad rap in the past decade, you know, or less, or half a decade, 5 to 10 years. How do you feel about that in your human geography lens? You know, is that like, don't you think that should be something that brings us together? But yet, like, so I've never been in the military. I worked in corrections for 14 years. So, you know, you're working for a government agency. There's sort of this idea of, you know, when you see somebody, I do these like rucking events, and they were started by it's a veteran, you know, based kind of thing out of military thing of rucking around, but it's really this idea of celebrating some things. And I remember one of my first like official rucking events I did in Philadelphia was like a historical thing. And so, you know, everybody kind of shows up. They kind of start to look the same. They're wearing like athletic-y, utilitarian kind of clothing. It's not militaristic, but it has this feel to it. We're carrying the American flag. People are wearing clothing with American flag on it. And all of a sudden, because there's like, it was this idea of, hey, you know, maybe you were a veteran and now you come out of the service and rucking was sort of part of your life in the military. And so it was kind of celebrated in that way. Like, how could we get people together to give this sense of community to sometimes that people are forgotten about in the veteran community? And then it was like, well, people who support people in the veteran community. And then it was just about like, well, hey, I want to walk around and get some good exercise, and that looks cool, and meet new people. So it was like right after the pandemic, we're like walking around, and there were these things like, you know, these groups or whatever, hate groups or whatever, you know, very fraternal groups, you know what I mean, that were like, oh, you know, like this weird idea of what they thought America maybe was. And I'm like, here we are marching through Philadelphia with our American flag, and how are we going to be received?
Right.
How do you see that as it comes to like the world lens? Like when people see this idea of like, it's almost become like a bad word. And I've seen it in other kind of venues where like, ooh, do we want to like, you know, maybe back off the American flag thing? And they were like, absolutely not. We're a veteran-founded organization. Right. Like, what are you, like, what?
Are you crazy?
No, like, are you crazy? And I get, you know, I've been waiting for that to come about. Yeah. Waiting to hear that. Like when I go to an organization that's, you know, on the CrossFit side of things. And it was like, oh, the landscape of being inclusive. What does that look like? And sometimes, you know, there's always a spectrum on everything. Yeah. Right. There's this way over here and there's way over here. And I don't think, you know, there's always, sometimes when you make something, there has to be a line in the sand. Yeah. Because of laws or whatever. You know, it's like you can park here after 11 or you know, but not at 10:59. We have to put a thing in there. Yeah. But this idea of like patriotism and the American flag, and we had somebody call in this week. They're like, I've seen people hanging, like I saw a decline in people hanging the American flag. They didn't want to be associated, you know, with America or with the, you know, they think because you support America as a country that you are supporting America, like, you know, the administration or whatever. What does that look like, or has that changed, or I don't know? Can you speak on that?
I mean, I still, when I teach about what nationalism is, and this is not
because you use the word nationalism. One of the first things I think of as a 55-year-old is Nazis. When I think of nationalism, you think of like, oh, this is like hardcore nationalism, where somebody takes that idea and then puts it to not good use.
Yeah. So, one of the things, as you were talking earlier, I was thinking about, you know, there are different groups and how those different groups within one particular society, how they have taken this idea of, you know, what patriotism, nationalism, embracing their country, their culture. Nationalism was obviously huge during the 1930s, 40s, as they were developing Nazi Germany. But if we think back to today, I mean, look around the country right now with the World Cup.
Yeah.
You know, with the different countries such as, what was it, Brazil, France, you know, just decked out in their national colors on the on the Rocky Steps.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's just the colors of the clothes or waving the flag, you know, body paint with some people
doing like the row. I saw that.
Yeah, with Norway of embracing their kind of Viking heritage, right? But it can be, it depends on how it's being shown and presented and kind of in what context too. So when I teach nationalism, it's like you are taking pride in your particular country, your country's heritage, and that can take many different forms, especially over time. But it depends on kind of the extent of it and how it's being presented to kind of the rest of society.
Yeah. I see such good things as us hosting the World Cup and all these events.
Yeah.
Because one, people, like Barry was saying earlier, people get to come experience American culture for what it really is.
Yeah.
And I think 90% of the time when you run into another American, you know, they're good people. Mm-hmm. People want to be good people. They want to be kind. They want to do good things. But right, there's these pockets of things that happen. But I read an interesting article. I'm going to try and kind of tie these together. This will speak to the psychology things, maybe, hopefully, that you have an understanding of. And it was this idea that they took two groups. They took groups of, one was who was at the, where was it the New York Marathon or the Boston Marathon where the bombing was?
Boston Marathon.
People that were actually at the Boston Marathon at the bombing, and then people who had just watched the news of the Boston. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how they tested this, but the people who had just watched videos and the news of it had this dramatically increased percentage of PTSD versus people who were actually there. So to me, I thought that was so interesting because I see that in real time in my experience with people as where they get their news from. I like to try and have a very wide lens when I'm looking at things, because it's about perspective. Mm-hmm. And I know my perspective can be easily biased and narrowed, so I want to talk to that's why I'm having you on.
Yeah.
Right? I want to get different perspectives. I want to learn. I want to see through somebody else's eyes and get that because maybe I can't have it in real time. I no longer can get it trustworthy through the mainstream media all the time. I think you have to pick and choose. But it's so interesting because I have that ability to talk to people like that, is talking to somebody and I will go, it is a stereotype, but I'll go, oh, I know where you're getting your news.
Yeah.
And then I can talk to somebody else and I go, oh, I know where you're getting your news.
Right.
And it's like, well, are there kernels of truth in there? There are, but it is like it's two dramatically different conversations.
It is.
Often talking about the very same thing. Mm-hmm. And I would assume that in human geography that is probably the biggest thing of meshing. You know, what does that really look like? That there's really some muddy water out there when it comes to, you know, this guy, you know, this always bad. Oh, this is always good. And it's like, well, it's not so simple. How do you deal with that when you're teaching things like that?
One of the things that not just me, but a lot of other social studies teachers do is that we will try and have students look at, you know, multiple different sources. Mm-hmm. We do talk about kind of media bias as well, especially when I have students do their research papers in my world history course, even as ninth graders, trying to get them to see, okay, where is the kind of not necessarily political leaning, but just kind of how is the information being presented? You know, even when you're looking at the same particular topic, you know, analyzing, let's see, look at other sources as well that can be talking about the same thing. Are there common threads that you're seeing? So that way you're able to kind of discern, okay, is this valuable, reputable source, or is this maybe isn't quite what I'm looking for? Maybe this is kind of stretching the truth just a little bit.
I think there's a lot of that for sure.
And kind of comparing the different sources covering the same material to see what's more truthful versus what might be kind of stretched a little bit.
I think that's the tiring thing societally right now, is because we have so much information, is that it's easy to kind of whittle it down, because we're not really designed to take in all this information all the time, everywhere, about everything.
Yeah.
And so I love that. I've used that common thread thing that you just spoke of throughout my life. I think it's really important. It's like, oh, well, let me read this. Let me see that. Let me listen to this, whatever it is. And I go, oh, here's the common thread. Yeah. And all three things, they have mentioned this thing as being factual. How they presented it might be very different.
Right.
And it's something as simple as, like, listen to the news. Listen to 3 different news stations today and how they talk about the weather. Mm-hmm. Like, they're like, oh, my God, it's really dangerous. Oh, it's dangerous? Like, oh, it's hot out. Be careful. You know what I mean? It is how they are bringing this to you. And I feel like a lot of news sources now, where it used to be, oh, here's an opinion piece, and it's, oh, and that's interesting, and here's the news.
Right.
Here's what we know. And how it's being offered up, though, is dramatically different in my lifetime. It's the merging of opinion and fact has really gotten quite nutty, and I don't know what that is. And I'm like, I don't want your opinion. I just want to know, what is the temperature right now?
Yeah.
And what is it supposed to be tomorrow and then the next day? Not, oh my God, stay inside, you'll die, or and you could take that to anything.
Yeah.
I don't want you to tell me it's bad. I want you to tell me what is happening.
Yeah. Well, and with going back to the human geography course, I mean, we talk about current events all the time in there. I have students look at current events and kind of relate it back to something that we've covered within that particular unit, or when we had just finished up our unit on political patterns, and then all the tensions with Iran and the Strait of Hormuz had started. And even though we had moved on to a different unit at that point, I'm like, okay, let's go back. Let's make some connections. Let's look at some sources. Let's look at the news. What is it talking about? What connections can you make back to the terms and concepts that we learned about over the last month? Let's apply it, because this is real. These are real things that are happening out in the world right now.
Awesome. Dan, we're going to wrap it up, but I have one more question here. So, coming from your human geography perspective, Westchester, the borough, and Chester County in general is a pretty well sought after place to live.
Yeah.
Particularly the borough. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. People want to live here. The housing prices reflect that.
Yes.
What makes a place like Westchester thrive currently? And it did not always thrive. I haven't always been as aware of Westchester because now I live in the borough, but I've lived in Chester County my whole life, but I live more northern of that. So, growing up, he's like, well, Westchester, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. I knew the courthouse was there. What do you think from a human geography perspective makes Westchester, the borough, and Chester County thrive while other small towns struggle? Like, what are some common threads that you've seen through your human geography perspective? Like, what makes a small town like Westchester boom versus what makes one die?
So a few things started going through my head. So first would probably be connectedness. So the fact that we're pretty close to Philadelphia, you can get there by public transportation. Mm-hmm. You can drive there if you have a car.
You could bike there.
There's bike trails, if you wanted to. Yeah, but it's the Schuylkill River Trail.
Yeah.
You have the university here certainly helps, because that's how I got here to Westchester, was because of the university. Sure. And then I've been here ever since I moved up here. But then also, with the borough itself, the amount of opportunities that are here, the fact that the county government is seated here helps with that. But then the amount of, restaurants, the amount of festivals and different events that happen, even like now that the street is closed out here on Gay Street during the summer, there's always like live music. There's always so many different events going on in the area. But that just kind of increases the kind of the likability of the area. It increases the just kind of overall environment that people are living in, and they're more likely to stay in a place that they enjoy being in, where there are more things to do and to experience, where maybe more in the more rural areas, not just of Chester County, but anywhere in the world, when there aren't as many things to kind of bring people in and kind of create a community like that, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But Westchester is definitely a place that kind of all those kind of combine and create a pretty cool place to live.
Cool. Eric, you got anything?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
What's one geographic fact about the U.S. that you find almost always surprises your students? Something that they learn about their own country. Like for example, one summer I delved deep, and I was going to I think for a whole week, every day I went into Philadelphia and did a different tour, doing different things from a historical perspective with my oldest son, and it was like great. I learned things. I was like, all this history is here. All these cool things happened.
Yeah. I would say so.
Something that's surprising.
Typically, when you look at a map of the U.S., I mean, you have the continental U.S., and then you have like a little tiny version of Alaska in one corner, and then Hawaii right next to it.
Yeah.
Alaska itself is absolutely enormous. If you were to take Alaska and kind of place it over the continental U.S., the very kind of far southeastern corner of Alaska, if you place that in Florida, it will stretch pretty much the entire length of the rest of the 48 states.
That's really interesting. I've seen a few things like where the map and perspectives were like, oh, we're drawing this part. Like they purposefully made something smaller and to put emphasis on something bigger that really, like by actual scale, is not bigger.
Correct.
And that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
That is a non-accurate representation of our planet.
Yeah. And then I do remember seeing something where it's like it was a map of Alaska, and then it had in the corner it had a map of the lower 48 states. Yeah. And it's a much like scaled down version, not nearly as much detail because the emphasis on that map was Alaska. Yeah. So kind of doing the opposite for what we tend to do with Alaska, for being such a vast amount of territory.
Do you have anything like that you can like an actual like, hey, to scale, this is like you undo the globe like a big giant map and here's what it really looks like?
No, but I should. That would be pretty cool.
They make things
too.
like that, though, right?
Yeah.
I've seen there's like a couple viral like kind of, I think it was in a movie or something where they talked about, oh yeah, like no, this country is 3 times the size of it is, but we just made it smaller because of some weird, overarching theme of we don't want to put a lot of emphasis on that.
Yeah, there is actually one thing
that I feel bad about
that I use in the beginning of the year. I think the website is called The Real Size Of.
Oh, okay.
And it is it's an interactive like map website where students can pick whatever country they want to and drag it around on a map projection to show how sometimes it'll greatly distort the size. Like when you look at a map and you see like Antarctica looks like this like monster coming up out of the bottom of a map when it's really nowhere near that size.
I got you.
Or when Greenland looked absolutely enormous on a map, like bigger than the entire continent of Africa. Yeah. Whereas Greenland is actually much, much smaller than Africa is, but kind of towards the, as you get closer to the poles of the world, the map kind of gets stretched more and can show distortion. So that's something that we do talk about in the course, kind of in the beginning.
All right. Most misunderstood region.
Africa. Because
why so?
Many students, and I cringe every time I hear it, is that they think Africa is a country.
Right.
Whereas Africa is a continent with, I think now it's 55, 56 different countries there. But just kind of just saying, Africa is a big country. It's like, well, no, it's a big continent. It's the second largest continent in the world, but it's a very diverse place, which I think is also something that students kind of don't really think about either.
Well, because there's these coastal regions, and I mean, as immense as the continent is, being at the southern tip of Africa versus being up closer towards, the
like if you're in Egypt or something, it's completely different.
Just a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Most underrated. These are my rapid fire questions. Okay. Most underrated state here in America.
Ooh,
underrated.
The first one to come to my head would be Maine.
Maine, why?
Maine is, you have a little bit of everything there. I went up there a few years ago. You have Bar Harbor, so Acadia National Park. You have Portland, so smaller city, but still pretty cool city. And then there are beaches in Maine, too, kind of more in the southern parts of the state. So if you're looking for a little bit of everything, I feel like Maine is a good spot that most people don't really tend to think about.
Which city best represents America today?
That's hard.
I know. These are like some real shooting from the hip here.
My first thought was either
go with your first thought.
Philly or New York.
Yeah.
Just because of in a lot of big cities, you're going to have a very diverse population. But I think kind of either of those, considering kind of the importance that those cities have on the country and just how diverse they are, because the United States is a very diverse country.
Oh yeah, that's how we were built.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think people kind of forget that a little bit sometimes. What's one American stereotype that geography proves wrong?
Ooh. That geography proves wrong? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't even know what the good answer to that is. I couldn't think of anything.
I mean, it can go back to, all kind of just lumping Americans into one particular group. But when you go around the United States, people in our area, in the Mid-Atlantic, very different than if you go down south or out west. Even into the Midwest, kind of each region has their own kind of specific kind of like cultures with them.
Do you think because our nation is so big and so vast compared to a lot of other countries that has such a, we oftentimes people, I'll hear the arguments, and this is a little more on the political side, is like, this country has like free health care, but also that country's the size of Pennsylvania.
Right.
Do you think that that's a problem because our country is so big? Like, why would somebody on the East Coast, you can't possibly care as much as, if you're actually living on the West Coast and you're dealing with West Coast issues. I think you see that kind of stuff in the news that works to divide us more than bring us together. But it's also like, well, right, you're over there dealing with that. I'm over here. I got my problems over here.
Yeah.
Do you feel that that's a problem?
I don't know if I would say it's a problem, but it definitely is an obstacle. To again, kind of going back with that idea of kind of nationalism.
Yeah.
It's more difficult in countries that are larger like that to be able to kind of have more of that cohesive kind of sense of unity than some of those other countries. Like if you look over in Europe, some of those countries over there are the size of Pennsylvania or some of our states here. So it is going to be easier for them because they're much smaller. Kind of that reach of the national government it doesn't have to go nearly as far.
That's right.
Compared to larger countries like the U.S.
Big machine. All right. Well, Dan, thank you so much for the interesting conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Shedding some light on human geography. There's a million other questions I'd love to ask and talk to you about. Maybe we'll have you back on.
Yeah, have me on again.
I would love that. Eric, you got anything?
No, I think he covered everything.
Cool.
I was thinking of things, but I'm like, it's not relevant now and stuff like that. But no, it was good.
All right, cool. Listen, Dan VanHassent tell us where you're from again.
Pennsylvania Leadership Charter School.
Awesome. And let's say I wanted to get my kid in the Pennsylvania Leadership Charter School. Where would they go?
Palcs.org, PALCS.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day, coming on here. I wish you great success, and I'd love to continue on the conversation maybe some other time if you'd like to come back.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Thank you so much for coming in. Dan VanHassent, human geography teacher, chair of the
Social Studies Department.
Social Studies Department. I have it all written down, but I don't want to read it. I just have you tell. And you teach psychology.
Yep.
Human geography.
And world history.
Yep. Awesome. Well, you've got a big plate on your table.
Yes, I do.
You do. You have a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just love the conversation. Thanks so much for
how they are taking it and portraying it somewhere else. So Nazi